I wanted to know what your personal vision for the future of psychedelics and medicine is.
Well, my personal vision, I guess, could best be explained by this idea of net zero trauma by 2070 around the world. So, what I mean by that is the beginnings of my work with psychedelics were about consciousness change for humanity as a whole.
Mm.
So, it was about spiritualizing humanity, mass mental health. There's always going to be psychopaths and dictators like Trump wants to be. But, we can't stop that. But what happens is people give away their power. And so those people that are giving away their power might be more amenable to healing, and a lot of them do that because of fears and anxieties. So the idea of net zero trauma by 2070 is that people are anxious, fearful, traumatized, and if we can try to reduce that. And so I think over time there'll be thousands, tens of thousands of psychedelic clinics, that the psychedelic therapists of the future will be cross-trained with all the different psychedelics, so they'll develop personalized treatments for each individual. Then there will also be group, potentially even large group healing sessions, and we already see that the indigenous cultures tend to do a lot of the psychedelics in groups. And so how do we evaluate the progress as we move towards what I hope will be people that have learned about how when you realize in a way that we're connected with everything, that at the same time that helps you appreciate your individuality, so that it's both you're more connected to the common, to everything, and you're more uniquely yourself. It's not one or the other. A lot of times people fear that it's, you see your connections, but then your individuality doesn't really matter. So I think the way that we need to do is spread psychedelics and access to it, but in wise context. So it would be religious context that people would use without legal prosecution in a way. There would be therapeutic context. And what we talked about here a little bit today was with the regulator, Marin from EMA, could you also have psychedelics for preventative medicine, not just after you've got the diagnoses? And so I think there's a good book by Aldous Huxley, Island, about his idea of what an idyllic society is with psychedelics woven in through it. It ends up, this island, being destroyed by the oil companies. So the idea from that is that, we really have to distribute this consciousness change all over, but it was where psychedelics are used as rites of passage for people as they're growing up. It's not just for adults. I recall being very disappointed with my bar mitzvah when I was 13 because it failed to turn me into a man, but I was ready for something spiritual. And so when our kids became 13, we said that we offered them MDMA or marijuana if they wanted. So I think that they all said they weren't ready. Came onto it later, but I do think that the psychedelics over time will be, hopefully, if we can make them legal, widespread, used in medicine and religion, and used throughout the ages, used in groups, that we can shift the consciousness of humanity. And another way that it does work for some people is to shoot them up in space, and they look at the Earth from space, which is way more expensive to do than giving somebody some LSD or something like that. So that's the broad vision.
Well, that's a beautiful vision. It's very complex. And if you could achieve one thing in the next 10 years, what would it be in terms of the vision?
Right now, I would say that it would be finding a philanthropist to develop MDMA for post-traumatic stress disorder in Europe in a nonprofit, public benefit, open science way in order to turn it into a generic. Because I think that Europe is going to be incredibly under stress, particularly with the change in U.S. foreign policy, which is not going to stand up to Russia or not to stand up to China, I fear. So I think because that would be the new model. That would be the model that I had hoped to achieve in the United States with MAVs that's now been more pharmaceutical. So I think that would be the one thing in the next 10 years if could be done. And I don't think it would take the full 10 years.
Okay.
But I think that would be it. And all we just need is, one philanthropist that says, I want to do it.
Yes.
that has, enormous resources, or a consortium of them or something. But that would be it. And what I did learn just from being here at this conference is that from Tadeusz, that the idea that I had about the Dutch naturalist studies, that's probably not going to happen. He showed me this letter you may have seen from the Dutch Ministry of Health saying that they're probably going to try to do a clinical trial, and they might fund it with $2 million instead of approving these big naturalist studies, even though the Dutch mental health committee did approve it. So it's been really helpful for me here to evolve, what I think might be possible in Europe, but that would be the one thing I would love to do in the next 10 years.
Great. Well, let's hope that you're helping us do that.
Yeah.
And we'll help you too.
Yeah.
And I just was curious about the community setting with the indigenous and how they heal together. And if you think that is the model.
I don't think there's the model. I don't think so. I think that even in the indigenous, let's say you want to be a shaman or something, they'll have individual sessions. They'll have they'll have vision quests that's on the individual level, so that there's combinations of individual and group. And I tend to feel one of the advantages, you could say, of America, the West, is the individual. And I've experienced a bit more when I've tried to use peyote or ayahuasca in sort of traditional context, religious context. I feel it tilts a bit more towards the group over the individual. But I don't think there's the model. I think there's many different models for different people. And even the group processes, as I said, in traditional, they also have opportunities for individual experiences.
Thank you so much for your time.
I'll add one thing,
yes.
Which is really interesting based on this question. So there's an underground MDMA therapist that has been tremendously involved with the Santo Daime, the ayahuasca church, the Santo Daime.
Yeah.
And yeah, and he has just brought MDMA down to Brazil, and he's sharing it with leaders of the Santo Daime. And they're finding that they get different kind of healings from the MDMA than they did from the ayahuasca. And there was actually a few of the groups that were thinking maybe they should make MDMA into a sacrament as well. But it's this concept that the different psychedelics are different flavors of different things, and you can learn from each one in a different way. And then the other was this experience I had quite a long time ago that was on the Native American church with the Navajo, and there was these two Navajo medicine men and woman. They were a married couple, and a friend of a friend had lived on their land. When they would go do peyote ceremonies, he would stay behind and take care of their sheep. And he kind of needed to chill out, and about a year later, he was better, and he felt better, ready to leave. And they said, "What was your medicine?" And he said, MDMA. So they asked for an MDMA ceremony to see what his medicine was. So they contacted me, and we went out onto the Navajo reservation and did this MDMA ceremony with this Navajo couple. And as it was getting sunset, and as we were kind of getting ready to do this all-night ceremony, there was this cloud of dust on the horizon, and it got closer and closer, and it turned out it was this girl on a horseback that was their 17-year-old niece coming to be our translator, because they only spoke Navajo and we only spoke English, and she spoke both. And during this ceremony, it felt like we had a poverty of ritual, but a freedom of openness, and they had, beautiful rituals, but a little bit more towards the group. But what was transpiring through the night is this: the woman was explaining that she'd had this chronic heart pain for a very long time, and under MDMA, she was explaining that it was about the loss of her culture, and that she was really worried, and that her family had split up, and some had become Christians and had given up the peyote, and through the middle of the night, it finally became clear to me that really this ceremony was for their niece, that she was the one that was bridging the culture, and they were losing so many of their young people to the wider culture, and they wanted her to see that we valued what they had. And it was just by the morning, after she had translated all of this back and forth, the medicine woman said that this heart pain was gone. So it was this kind of mind body, and then we all went to sleep after sunrise, and in the afternoon we're getting ready to leave, and we go to say goodbye, and this girl is reading 17 magazine, this fashion magazine, and that's where it became even crystal clear to me that she was the purpose for this whole ceremony. So the hope is that these indigenous rituals and traditions that have kept alive despite massive pressure, that even in their suffering, they're open to other models. So that just gets back to there's no one right way.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.